We live in a world of just incredible expertise. We can build these massive skyscrapers, we can perform heart surgery, we fly jets all over the globe. But what happens when our own knowledge becomes so complex that even the top experts can't quite keep up? Well, in this explainer, we're going to break down Atul Gawande's incredibly powerful and really simple idea for getting things right when the stakes are at their highest.
And this quote from the author himself, Surgeon Atul Gawande, really gets to the heart of it. He says, "Knowledge has both saved us and burdened us." Basically, we've gotten so good at what we do, the amount of information is so vast, that we've created a totally new kind of problem. We know so much, but our ability to actually deliver on all that knowledge correctly, safely, every single time is starting to crack under the pressure.
So that's really the big question we're tackling here. What do you do when you've trained for years, you're at the absolute top of your field, but these avoidable mistakes, they're still happening? What's the solution? Well, the answer is surprisingly simple, but as you're about to see, it's not always so easy to accept. All right, so let's start by digging into the problem itself. And to be clear, this isn't about a lack of knowledge or a lack of skill, not at all. It's about the failure to apply what we already know, especially when things get complicated and the pressure is really on. I mean, just think about it. A doctor today might have to choose from thousands of different drugs and procedures. An engineer might be dealing with millions of lines of code, where just one tiny misplaced character can bring the entire system crashing down. The sheer volume of it all is it's too much for any single person's memory to handle perfectly every single time. And that's exactly where the cracks start to show. Okay, check out this story from 1935. It just perfectly lays out the problem. Boeing had built what everyone thought was going to be the next great American bomber. On paper, it was an absolute masterpiece. But on its very first test flight, with one of the best Air Corps pilots at the controls, it took off, climbed to 300 feet, and then just stalled and fell out of the sky in a massive explosion. The investigation found nothing wrong with the plane. The verdict? Pilot error. This expert pilot had simply forgotten one small critical step: to release a lock. The plane was just, as they said, too much airplane for one man to fly. And look, this isn't just some old story about airplanes. This number, 150,000. That is the estimated number of deaths that happen after surgery in the US every single year. To put that into perspective, that's like a full 737 crashing every single day. And here's the kicker. These are not all unavoidable tragedies. The research shows pretty consistently that the knowledge to prevent at least half of these complications and deaths, it's already out there. The failure isn't in what we know. It's in how we consistently apply what we know when things get hectic. So if more training and more expertise wasn't the answer for that too complex airplane, then what was? Well, that brings us to the solution, an idea that Gawande himself describes as almost ridiculously simple.
That's it. That was the big idea. A group of test pilots got together and realized, hey, the plane isn't unflyable, it's just too complicated to leave to memory alone. So they created a simple, step-by-step checklist on an index card. And with that little tool, they flew that same model of plane for 1.8 million miles without a single accident. The B-17 Flying Fortress was born, and it went on to become a key factor in World War II.
So why does something so incredibly basic work so well? Well, it's because it protects us from two very human flaws. First, our memories. They're just not perfect, especially when we're under a lot of pressure. And second, and this one is maybe even more dangerous for experts, is that urge to skip steps. You rationalize, oh, this is routine, I've done it 1,000 times before. A checklist just forces you to pause, to confirm you did the basics. So let's be really clear what we're talking about here. A checklist is not some giant how-to guide for dummies. Think of it more like a professional discipline. It's a quick, simple tool that's designed to support the incredible skills that experts already have. It makes sure the basic, critical stuff doesn't get overlooked, so they can focus all their brain power on the hard, unexpected problems that pop up. Okay, that B-17 story is powerful for sure. But does this idea actually work elsewhere? Let's take a look at the proof, because honestly, the results are absolutely staggering. We're going to start at Johns Hopkins Hospital with Dr. Peter Pronovost. He was getting really frustrated with a common, deadly, and supposedly routine problem in the ICU: infections from central lines. These infections were happening to about 11% of patients and, tragically, were often fatal. So what did he do?
He created this checklist. And just look at these steps. Wash your hands with soap. Clean the patient's skin. I mean, these are not groundbreaking medical discoveries. This is literally the stuff you learn on day one at medical school. But in the chaos of a busy ICU, nurses were seeing doctors skip at least one of these basic steps about a third of the time. But here's the genius move. He empowered the nurses to actually stop the doctors if they saw a skipped step. And the result? It was just night and day. The 10-day line infection rate went from 11% all the way down to 0, gone. They essentially eliminated what was once a routine complication. Now, when this super simple checklist was rolled out across ICUs all over the state of Michigan, the results were just incredible. In the first 18 months alone, hospitals saved an estimated, get this, $175 million.
But that's just the money. Even more importantly, during that same period, they saved over 1,500 lives, all from a simple checklist of things that everyone already knew how to do. All right, now for a hard pivot to a completely different field, the rock band Van Halen. They famously had this clause in their massive concert contract. It said there had to be a bowl of M&Ms backstage, but with all of the brown ones removed. For years, this was the ultimate example of rock star excess and ego, right? Turns out it wasn't about ego at all. As the singer David Lee Roth later explained, the M&M clause was actually their checklist. You see, Van Halen's stage show was huge and incredibly complex. Their contract writer was like a phone book. If the local promoter hadn't read it carefully enough to pick out the brown M&Ms, the band knew they had to do a full top-to-bottom safety check because it was a pretty good bet that other, far more dangerous details were also missed. The brown M&M was a test for diligence. So, with evidence like this from hospitals, from airplane cockpits, even from rock concerts, why aren't checklists everywhere? I mean, it's a great question, and it brings us to our final and maybe most important point. Why do we resist such a simple, powerful tool?
This quote from Gawande it absolutely nails it. He says it feels beneath us to use a checklist. It goes against this cultural image we have of the expert as a hero, right? A lone cowboy who relies on instinct and audacity and improvisation. A checklist feels like the opposite of that. It feels like a crutch. It's like admitting that our memory and our expertise, they aren't totally infallible.
So maybe this means our whole idea of what a hero is needs an update. Maybe true expertise isn't about being the daring cowboy who just wings it. Maybe the real hero is the one who has the humility and the discipline to get the basics right every single time, so that when a real unexpected crisis hits, they can apply their full, undivided genius to solving it. And really, that's the big takeaway for all of us. Checklists are not just for pilots and surgeons. Think about your own work, your own projects, even your daily life. What are those simple, repeatable steps that, if you miss one, can cause huge problems down the line? By turning those into a simple checklist, you free up your mental energy to truly focus on the hard stuff, the things that really matter most.